Hello and welcome to this review of my Apple Extended Keyboard 2. Unfortunately, I can't run this keyboard as I lack the hardware necessary to run it, so I had to break my usual rule of using a keyboard for at least 2 weeks before I review it. The reason is that it doesn't use a normal connection, it uses a proprietary connection through ADB buses. There's one on the left side of the keyboard here and one on the opposite side there. And the idea is that you can daisy chain several applications through the same port on your computer. Let's start off with the basics. Here's the model sticker. As you can see, family number 3501, and it's made in the USA. It's specifically in 1991. So this keyboard is actually quite old. It is an Apple product through and through. It looks quite futuristic, it's a little bit gimmicky, and fairly weird in a lot of ways, and I'm going to try and cover as many of them as I can. First of all, the feet, or rather the foot. It has only one, and it's very long. It stretches all the way from there to there on the keyboard, so it's almost the entire length of it, and it's not a flip out one either. It is controlled by this slider that you can see here. Now, the slider can be adjusted to any level, so it's kind of an analog control, and it's fairly stiff. There you go. As you can see, it extends pretty far away, and the keyboard itself is already angled. It has this tilde-like shape. So when you combine the two, it sits at a huge angle, at roughly this angle on your desk, which is fairly hilarious. I don't know who would want to type like that, but the option is there if you want it. Second thing is the profile of the keycaps. As you can see, the profile is quite weird. It looks almost stepped, so as if they are at the same profile, but they're not. I can't really explain it, but it's quite different from other profiles I've seen so far. These look very flat, and then these are a bit more angled, and these are flat again. I don't really know what's up with that, but that's what Apple went for, I guess. Next up, the keycaps. The keycaps are pretty high quality. They're made out of PBT, so they don't yellow with age, and they're fairly thick. I'm proud of a keycap here, so you can have a look. As you can see, that's pretty nice. And if you rub your fingers across the keyboard, it doesn't make that much noise. That's pretty much always a sign of good quality. I really do like that. The legends are a bit strange, however. If you look, you can see that the typeface they used is at an angle, so it's cursive, and they're not at the top left where they normally are, but they're at the bottom left. And this was quite confusing when I was doing some simulated typing, because say the G key, normally if the legend is here, that would mean that the rest of the key is roughly here, so we're trying to hit it there, and that doesn't really work all that well. Maybe some people are used to this, but I'm not a touch typist, so I have to look where I hit the keys, and to me it was pretty confusing. Not just that, but they have a few quite interesting legends. If we go over here, you can see that a little bit better. It's got this help key. I'm not sure whether help is the default or the alternative function, and a delete key here. So you have delete and this, which I'm not sure what that means. I think it looks almost like it would mean the same thing. I'm not an Apple user, so I can't really tell, but I wouldn't be able to tell what the difference between them is. In addition, the backspace key is also called delete, and unfortunately, like I said, I can't run the computer to find it out, but I really don't know what the difference is now between that delete, and that delete. So if anyone knows, please leave a note in the comments or something. Obviously, it doesn't have Windows keys, it has an Apple key, and it's at the space the Alt would normally occupy. And they put the Alt, or Option key, where the Windows key is. And I guess that can be a bit confusing if you're not used to that. It has 15 function keys, the usual 12 in rows of 4, and then there's a row of 3 here. Houses the last 3. They're also shared with print screen, scroll lock, and pause. Presumably some Apple products use these keys, I guess. And then there's the Numpad. The Numpad is also different. These keys are all in different positions from what they normally would be, and the plus key is only one unit instead of being these two units. And the reason for that is that they fitted an equals key here. And I actually really quite like that, because I do a lot of work with Excel, especially with formulae, and as a result I use the keypad quite a lot, but then I have to reach all the way over here for the equals button. But now, with this layout, I would have been able to just go equals and then blah, 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 and enter. I really quite like this idea. I think that's a good one, and I wish I had it on the keyboard that I'm actually using. Another little interesting gimmick is that they changed the home keys from F and J to D and K, and I think that must be made for your middle finger or something, because if you put your index finger on that and then try to hit the Y key, that's just doesn't work. I mean, I've got fairly long fingers, but you know, I just can't get over there comfortably. I think I'd get cramped within half a minute doing that. The key switches it uses are cream, also known as Ivory Alps switches. They're more or less a dampened version of Black Alps, and this is a typical design decision for Apple, who tended to go for quiet, tactile switches during this time, rather than loud, clicky ones. I'll press it a couple of times so you can hear it. Doesn't make that much noise, as you can tell. It's a little bit of a thock noise, but it's fairly quiet. I quite like them, actually. They feel much like Black Alps, slightly rough and a bit bumpy, but I kind of like the fact that when they bottom out, it's not as heavy. It's a little bit cushioned by the damping mechanism, and that really helps the feel of the keyboard quite a lot. The way the damping works is by using this double-sided black rubber cushion in the side of the slider. Normally this recess is filled, but in these dampened models there's a little space for the rubber cushion. The cool thing is that, in contrast to cherry switches, which use O-rings on the key stems, these silence the keystrokes upwards as well as downwards. So cherry switches, if you release them, they still have a loud noise when they spring back up and hit the top of the switch, but these don't. They're silent on both directions. And unlike cherry O-rings, however, these are not easily modified. You do need to take the whole switch apart, whereas cherry O-rings, you simply pull the keycap off and either put them on or remove them. It also means that only these sliders can be modified, because the other ones simply have that recess filled, so it only works with these sliders. Nonetheless, it's a cool system and it works quite well. I'd say it makes a nice silent sound. I'll try and demonstrate that to you here. So fairly silent, as you can tell, especially compared to other Alps keyboards, most of which tend to be fairly noisy. Even this key, which I think is the power key, gets these cream or Ivory Alps switches on them, so you get a tactile dampened power key. The profile is flat, presumably to avoid confusion with the other keys, which are obviously cylindrical. A unique exception is the caps lock key, which is actually a latching key switch. If you press it, it stays down, and if you press it again, it springs back up. It's not particularly clean. It sometimes doesn't really work all that well, but I guess it will suffice. If you take off the keycap, you can see the slider, and you'll notice immediately that it's not ivory colored, it's gray in color instead, and it has a different profile. Moreover, it has a latching track at the front that you can see there, and a latching pin thingy there at the bottom, which is white in color. And when you press the switch, the arm follows the track, gets stuck in a recess there, and when you press it again, it's freed from that recess. So that's essentially how the switch works. It's rudimentary, it works, but like I said before, I wouldn't call it too reliable. It doesn't feel that nice. Obviously, the caps lock key is not a key that you would use all that often, but I don't know, they probably could have come up with a better system if they tried. All in all, I'd say this keyboard has its pros and cons. The pros are that it has a nice key feel, which I really like. It's fairly silent, which is good for use in open offices. The keycaps are nice and thick, good quality, and I like that little equals key on the keypad. The biggest disadvantage is probably that it runs on that weird cable and that it uses a different protocol, so you need a converter to make it work. And I just don't really like the legends, for instance, or some of the other weird quirks for which there doesn't really appear to be any reason. You can get one for about 40 to 50 quid on eBay, and these are actually one of the more common types of Alps keyboards that you can find. So that's it for this review. Hope you enjoyed it, and here is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.